sure we are all familiar with one of America's favorite sitcoms, Friends. Friends aired on NBC starting in 1994 and lasts for 10 seasons until 2004. If you aren't familiar with the show, Friends revolves around the lives of 6 good friends living in Manhattan. Friends turned out to be one of the most successful sitcoms ever produced. It won many awards and was adored by millions of people around the world. One of the greatest things about the show was that viewers were able to relate to one of the 6 main characters as they negotiated their way through adulthood. When analyzing Friends for racial bias, one of the first things to notice is the setting. Friends takes place in New York, which is one of the most densely populated areas and represents a lot of ethnic diversity. Friends was aired from 1994 to 2004, so this is a chart that represents the racial makeup of Manhattan in the year 2000. Although white represents the majority of the ethnic makeup, there are still a variety of races that make up the city. The chart on the right shows some of the races that make up specifically Manhattan and the number of people represented by these races in the year 2000, which was right in the middle of the time Friends was being aired. This slide is to compare the racial makeup of Manhattan versus what the show really represents. Friends is an all-white cast. The first major black role was given 7 years after the start, and it only lasted 3 episodes. Throughout the whole 10 seasons, there's barely any interaction with other races throughout the series. A big theme in the show is the romantic lives of 6 cast members. In 10 seasons of watching 6 people's love lives, there are hardly any romantic relationships with other races. For the 2 or 3 that there were only maybe a couple of episodes, and those characters were challenged, feared, or disliked by other cast members. This almost suggests that Manhattan was for white middle class and higher only. Oprah had the cast on her show in 1996, and even she had some things to say about the racial makeup of the show. There are many little examples within the show that demonstrate racial bias and microaggressions, but since this is meant to be a short video, these are just a couple of examples. When Rachel meets Julie, the girl Ross comes home with after he visited China, she hands her flowers and says, "Welcome to our country." And Julie responds by saying, "Thank you, but I'm from New York." This is a comedy-based show, but this represents one of the microaggressions in Friends. Also, on a Halloween episode, multiple children come to the door to trick or treat. The one part of the episode shows Rachel and a black child arguing when he rings the door asking for money instead of candy. This is just a coincidence that they were both Rachel. Friends suffers from an issue of whitewashing. Like many other current shows, Friends assumes that white is the norm. By assuming this, the show alienates potential viewers outside this standard and refuses to acknowledge racial privilege. It assumes that everyone can be part of their gang, when in actuality, the privilege of Joey, Chandler, Ross, Rachel, and Monica, and Phoebe is beyond what most New York City residents experience. What can we do? We shouldn't be afraid to discuss imperfections or question an insanely popular show's cultural significance. People should talk about imperfections and demand more from the media we ingest. We also always have to understand that things portrayed in the media are always going to represent unrealistic lifestyles. The bottom line is that Friends was an incredible television show. It's still my absolute favorite show. It's funny and heartwarming. It defined a generation and had a huge cultural impact, but as you can see, it is far from perfect. Yes, you should still watch Friends. I know I always will. But it's important to acknowledge that there's a lot to talk about when it comes to what is represented on popular television.